my philosophy in life, because you know what? We can all have dreams. We can, in fact, believe those dreams. But unless you put them into action, you're going nowhere. You've got to dream it, believe it, and do it. It's an absolute pleasure to be here to join you all today. And rather than me spending a long time describing the world in which I've come from, I think it's a lot easier to simply invite you all to step into my office. So there you have it. That's basically how you take a 17-year career and you just compress it into a 1-minute pop video. I think that's the way forward in life, is it not? So for 17 years serving in the Royal Air Force, much of that time was spent flying this mighty beast, the Tornado GR4. I'm actually only one of a handful of women that have ever flown this. I never really grasped how few, though, until in February this year, I was invited down to London here to a Tornado pilots reunion. I was quite excited by this as a concept, especially when I opened the door of this bar to be met by a sea of 400 men. Happy days, I thought. I've been married for a really long time. But I started to look around the room and I thought, hold on a minute, this is ridiculous. I couldn't actually see any other women present. There were two. Yes, I spotted them eventually. Jo was the first, I was the second, and Kirsty was the third. She also went on to fly in the Red Arrows. We had this photo taken, we popped it out onto social media, as you do, basically asking, what's the collective noun for a group of female Tornado pilots? A mistake, basically, as you can imagine. We were hit by this barrage of insults and apparent banter. But one I liked, and I'm sticking with it, it's you're a flamboyance. So it's the only one clean enough to repeat in today's company. The thing I loved about my job, though, I'll be really honest, it's the fact that it's challenging. It's the fact that when you go to work, every single day is very different. On one day, you're taking off in a jet like this. It's clean. There's nothing hanging from it. It means that you can pull up to its maximum G-force. Can you imagine on a roller coaster? That heavy feeling at the bottom of a loop-the-loop? You might experience about 3 times the force of gravity. When I'm involved in dogfighting or air-to-air combat, I might experience up to 9 times the force of gravity. At 9G, your body is the same weight as a Formula One car. You're quite literally pinned in your seat. You're looking for your opponent, and your job is to technically shoot the other one down. Now, as I'm talking, I'm seeing 2 words passing across the minds of everybody in this room. You are all thinking the same thing. Top Gun, yes, exactly. Well, to be honest, when I turned up to the squadron, so was I. In fact, I was thinking, it's time to change my name because Mandy just didn't really seem to cut the mustard with the likes of the Mavericks, the Vipers, the Icemen of the world. I was going for Ice Maiden, if I'm honest. But you don't get to choose your own call sign. And unfortunately for me, I am 6 foot tall. Yes, I do fit into a cockpit. But there was a program on in America at the time called Sesame Street. Yes, my call sign became Big Bird. If you want disappointment, that's it in one easy move, basically. 17 years with Big Bird written across your chest. It's not the way forward, I assure you. But this is where my heart really lies. You know, you're taking off in a £50 million jet. You're flying off through the valleys of the Lake District, round the corner into Wales. You look up onto the hills in front of you, and you see somebody walking. And you know they are enjoying the peace and quiet of the countryside, and you think, aha, you cannot hear or see me yet, but I can see you from the distance. Your hands go towards your throttles. You get this overwhelming urge just to suddenly ram them into full reheat. You're thrust back into your seat as you accelerate to just under 700 miles an hour. And at that critical stage of flying, one wrong move and this will all go horribly wrong. So what do? You must go back to your basics. You must remember what is truly important in life. As you go past, you turn the jet on its side, and you just give the casualest of jaunty waves, basically, out the top of the canopy. As I did on this occasion, I was flying through the Machynlleth Loop in Wales in a Hawk aircraft, and no sooner had I landed, that photo was already on the internet, and I was being summoned yet again into my boss's office. He said, Mandy, have you been waving at the sponsors again? Oh, sorry, taxpayers, by the way. Thank you for your donations. I said, I have actually, sir. And he goes, well, I happen to love this photo. Get it out there, get it on the wall. But you know what? I'm often asked, how did I get into this? Well, we all need role models in life. Mine came in the form of my grandpa, Second World War fighter pilot and veteran himself. And throughout his life, he drip-fed me these stories. And it started to fan the flames of a passion. So at the age of 13, that is what innocence looks like, yes, by the way. At 13, I joined the Air Training Corps. On the very first day, it opened its doors to girls. It was while I was there, I flew for the first time, and suddenly, that was it. I had a goal. I had direction. But I'll be honest, my journey to get there was not that simple. To begin with, out of about 3,000 applicants, one person ends up in a fast jet cockpit. So competition is incredibly fierce. The other big problem I had that was women were not allowed to be pilots in the Air Force. Well, that was quite a big stumbling block, as you can imagine. And then when they did change the rules, when I was in my second year at university, I then went off to do all the aptitude tests. I failed them the first time round, but you're allowed to take them twice in your life. So I went back a year later, took them all again, and you'll be pleased to hear I failed them all again. And suddenly that's the end of the line. I could go no further. But sometimes you need other people to have that belief in you, and mine came in the form of this gentleman, the one holding the trophy. He couldn't understand why someone who had proved herself in the air had no aptitude as far as a computer program was concerned. He got impartial examiners to fly with me, and they all graded me as the highest marks, above average. So now we have a computer system saying she can't, and humans that said she can. It was then that the Air Force offered me a commission to become an air traffic controller. And I'll be honest, zero interest to do that. But in the back of my mind, I just kept on thinking, sometimes all we need is the foot in the door. And so I decided to take them up on the commission. I'm going to show you a quick video of me at the age of 20, when I've just accepted the commission to become an air traffic controller. I failed all the tests to be a pilot, and I'm being interviewed by a gentleman called Gaz Top, non-stop. I don't know if any of you remember him. I didn't until someone sent me this video recently, but here's me at 20 years old.
How are you?
Very well, thank you, sir.
I'm just happy. I'll learn.
Good.
Now, you're not RAF yet either, are you?
No, I'm not. I'm joining in October, but I go to Cranwell.
You're on the same scheme as Matt?
That's right, yes, at the moment.
What are you flying at?
I'm flying Bulldogs at the moment, but hopefully on to Monte Carlos. So it's quite fun.
There aren't many women flying aircraft in the RAF, are there?
No, not very many at all. That's probably because they only started recruiting in 1990, but they're getting to be more and more of us as a breed.
I want to ask you, whatever drove you to wanting to get into aircraft? It's quite a boysy sort of area.
It is.
And you're not macho, are you?
Well, I'm not. Well, my grandpa was a pilot, and I think that basically was my lead into becoming a pilot, hopefully, in the RAF.
So, after you've done your Bulldog, after you've flown a Tucano, you might get to fly a Jaguar. What kind of qualities to get to fly one of these fellas?
Well, I suppose you have to be pretty aggressive, and you have to be, well, excellent all-round pilot to actually get up to the standard of fast jets anyway.
You reckon you could cut it?
Hope so. Fingers crossed.
And so, with my fingers incredibly tightly crossed, I did join, and I wrote hundreds of letters to anybody that would hear my case. I just wore them down in the end, because I finally got one back. It said, "Dear Flying Officer Wells, the RAF will give you a branch change to become a pilot." And I thought, yes, I have broken the system. And then it said, "We are taking you on as a test case. We'd like to find out how far through the flying training system someone with no aptitude can get before they fail." which was lovely. Can you imagine the opportunity of a lifetime being dangled there, but being told, by the way, you won't ever achieve it? And that was one of the hardest challenges I had to ever overcome. I later found out why they'd also given me the chance. They'd only just opened the doors to women, and 70% of women that took the test failed them. 80% of men passed, and they realized they'd changed their recruiting pool but not changed their testing, and maybe they might need to modernize their system as well. So sometimes not just accepting the status quo, being the one that does challenge it, is the way forward, and never giving up on those dreams, even though the doors appear to be closed in front of you. Now, the training you get in the military is second to none. For a pilot, you start by flying something like this, goes about 120 miles an hour, quickly progress to Tucanos, double the speed, and eventually the Hawk, based at RAF Valley in Anglesey. You might have heard of it. It's where Prince William was based for a few years. Sadly, we didn't overlap. Otherwise, I genuinely believe the royal wedding would have been very different. I like to think. Anyway, I was 2 trips away from graduating, and I failed a flight. Not a problem. I'd failed many in the past. Flew again the next day. I failed it again. And suddenly, the little person on my shoulder is saying, oh, this is as far as you get before you fail. Because I'd been waiting for that to happen. 3 more flights, and I am now being put up for something called a chop ride. It does what it says on the tin. If you don't pass the flight, you're leaving the Air Force. The trip I'd failed, I'd learned to fly the aeroplane, maneuver at low level, bombing, strafing, navigation, close formation. And we were putting all those skills together in the tactical environment, low level formation called battle. 2 aeroplanes heading off at about 100 feet, hitting targets within 5 seconds at 500 miles an hour with no GPS, no head-up display, no moving map. We had this paper map, a stopwatch, and a compass. You've also got an enemy that's airborne whose sole job in life is to shoot you out the sky. They're also called our instructors. Yes, and they have one blind spot when we're flying. It's directly behind our own aircraft. We cannot see into that space. So if you are an individual, guaranteed to fail. But give me my wingman, and suddenly we can provide that essential mutual support. It means we must coordinate our turns. We can't just turn to the left. We're 2 singletons. So you must think ahead. As I'm coming up to a turn, we're pulling up. We're crossing at a perpendicular, and then we're rolling out in perfect formation, apart from me, because this is the aspect I was failing. I was always in the wrong space. Every night I went back to my room, I got my cardboard cockpit out. I'd sit on my bed. You don't see that in Top Gun, do you? It's not quite as powerfully impactful as the volleyball scene, I think. But I'd sit there on my bed, flicking switches, making radio calls, answering my own radio calls. And there's a knock on my door. One of my course mates, Rob, or the young puppy, as he's called, guy just to my right in the picture, the youngest on the course. He is old enough to fly. He's not about 12, though, as he looked on this. He knocked on the door and he said, Mandy, we've decided we're going to take you out this evening. I said, I'm going nowhere with you, Rob. I know they'd all finished, basically, and had been celebrating in the bar. He said, no, you must trust me. And when he said that, I thought, you know what do I have to lose? Anyway, he took me down to the bike sheds. Trust waned, obviously, at that point. But we got onto our bikes. We cycled to the other side of the airfield, where he dramatically opens this hangar door. And there, waiting in the darkness, were the remaining members of my course, who had been very busy that evening, making their bikes into aeroplanes, yes. These guys would now spend the next 3 hours of their evening cycling in battle formation, practicing the one aspect I was failing. 60 port, 30 starboard, rotate, all those maneuvers. I mean, obviously we didn't have the vertical separation because it's not Harry Potter, okay. But suddenly the penny dropped and I thought, God, this is easy. Why couldn't I do it before? But I don't know about you guys. You know when you're stuck in that rut, you're working on something, you get that absolute tunnel vision, fixation on the task in hand, and we have a real tendency to keep on doing it in the same way, and we get exactly the same results. It's when we need people around us, our colleagues, our friends, our networks, to actually put a different slant on it, to give us a different way of thinking, and suddenly we accelerate to the next level. I flew the trip the next day. I didn't know if I'd passed, but at the end, I opened my canopy. My instructor got out, and out the corner of my eye, I saw him casually kneeling down and kissing the tarmac. I thought, yeah, that does not bode well, basically. He's so relieved I haven't killed him. He is just celebrating life. He looked at me and he said, what the hell was that? I thought, oh, please don't say I'm chopped. He goes, I like you, Mandy, but quite frankly, you've gone from bad to work and worse. And yesterday he said, you were absolutely rubbish, or words to that effect. He said, that was a completely different performance. What has happened? And I told him the story about what the guys had done. And he just said, wow, I'm blown away. I said, I know. It was so funny. They'd made wings. He said, Mandy, it's more than that. There are only 6 spaces for your course to fly Harriers, Tornadoes, and Jaguars, the 3 fast jets at the time. You're number 7. So one of your mates has actually jeopardized his own career advancement by about a year to get you through. And when you think about what it's like to be part of a team, to go the extra mile for people around you, then how often do we act selflessly? How often do we put others before ourselves? And for me, I was blown away by that camaraderie. You know, I saw this recently and I loved it, because trust is the one thing that actually epitomizes everything. You know, any team needs trust. To build it up, we need credibility. Well, to get the job, you've got to be credible. Reliability, who are those go-to people in your team? And intimacy, and I am not talking on a dodgy level for those dirty minds. Pinpointed it, it's back row over there. But this is the emotional intelligence side. This is what makes the members of our team tick. But underpinning it every single time will be the selflessness. It will be those people that go the extra mile when there's nothing to gain. And there's a reason that team is spelt like that. It's because together everyone achieves more. And you might say, yes, apart from your story, Mandy, because somebody evidently missed out. But when it was reported up through the chain of command, our squadron commander has the ability to keep one person on as something called a creamie. And it's when they take the very top person out of flying training and they stay as an instructor. And it meant that every single one of my course graduated onto our aircraft types of choice. Mine was to fly the mighty Finn on 2 Squadron. I was immediately posted actually out onto an exercise in America called Red Flag, based out of Las Vegas. Someone had to go. It's disappointing, obviously. It's an incredible exercise costing about $20 million, put on by the Americans. You're up against these guys. They are the top guns. Their job is to shoot you down. Every morning starts with this mass briefing. And I suddenly realized that I could fly my airplane, but that was not enough. I had to go to degree level within a matter of minutes. Basically, I was like a rabbit in the spotlight. Every single day, I was learning more and more skills. And to help me, because just getting airborne on time was challenging, can you imagine 100 jets airborne in 20 minutes? You had a matter of seconds. If you missed your slot, you're out. I was put to fly with Michel Dupont, a very, very experienced navigator from France. And I was thrilled to be with Michel, on many different levels. Funny incident with Michel one evening when I got dressed up. It was the first night that the squadron had seen me not wearing my attractive grow bag or flight suit. And I basically arrived 5 minutes late so I could make an entrance. As I descended the steps of the hotel, all the squadron were at the bottom. They all looked up, but Michel and my eyes met across the crowded room. And he said, "Oh, Mandy." Excuse my accent, I'm rubbish. But, "Oh, Mandy, you're looking beautiful this evening." At which point the guy next to him, Rich, hit him across the back of the head. He went, "You can't say that to Mandy. She is one of the boys." And Michel turned back and went, "Puh, you Brits, you have so much to learn about women." Love them equally for their comments, I'll be honest. But can you imagine having a mentor on your shoulder, 1 foot behind you at all times, guiding you, correcting any minor mistake you make, keeping you on the right track? It's so powerful. You know, when it came to bringing the jets home, we are exhausted. We've been over there for 2.5 weeks, flying every single day. This is a 3-day trip. Basically, the second 2 days are slightly more challenging because there's something that's missing. Land. Yes. To get you across the Atlantic, you'll be doing something called air-to-air refueling. You have an airliner like this, which is full of fuel, and it has a hose hanging out the back with a basket on it. All you have to do is extend your probe and place it into the moving basket. You're all thinking that looks easy. You're traveling at 400 miles an hour at 30,000 feet. We're told not to look at the basket in the final stages because if you look at it, you lunge and you miss. So they say just keep it in your peripheral vision. Often you're in thick cloud. You can barely even see the aircraft you're formating on, and that can sometimes lead to clear air turbulence. So suddenly it's no longer a stable platform, but it's basically like prodding in the dark, quite frankly. If you ram your probe in too hard, you will damage the basket and you will ingest all the metal into your engine, which is not good. To help you in that stressful situation, you've got the encouragement of your wingmen. They're giving words of advice. As you're going up, they're going, "Oh, she's missed again. It was a lovely moment. Anyway, we landed in the Azores, woke up to beautiful blue skies, and I thought this is going to be an easy day home. How wrong could I be? After the first tanking bracket, we entered a wall of cloud that was thicker than any I've ever been in my life. After staring intently at the aircraft strobe light for 4 hours, you realize that you're in a slightly stressful position. And it was then that I heard the most chilling radio call. America have just shut their airspace. Can you imagine the thinks bubbles that were going on? 4 jets, 1 airliner, and we're hearing that a continent just to our left has shut down. The date was, of course, September the 11th. And we're always told that we must control the controllables. We had no idea of the bigger picture. But what we did understand was that if we're in thick cloud and the continent has shut down, every aircraft will be being turned away. We've actually got a huge risk of a mid-air collision. So we started to scan the airspace in front of us, basically clearing our space so we didn't hit anybody. And then as we came through to the UK, I heard another awful radio call. There was an American aircraft carrier, a big ship, that has an exclusion zone of 5 miles around it. Unfortunately, this aircraft had not read the notice to airmen that day and was flying directly towards the ship. The Americans believed that it was a terrorist. They were loading live weapons and they were about to shoot this aircraft down. That was what we heard on the radio. With no concept of what's happened in America, we're now hearing on a beautiful sunny September day that the Americans in peacetime are about to shoot down a civilian aircraft over the Isle of Wight. We realized we had to act. We basically tried to reach this aircraft on every available frequency and had no joy. And in the end, we dived down from 20,000 feet. We approached this aircraft on its wing and we escorted it out the way. He had about 2 minutes to run before what would have been a catastrophe in UK airspace that day. It changed my future because I was almost immediately posted out to Iraq, where I would spend the next 4 years on 3 monthly detachments out to a base called Ali al-Salem, just outside Kuwait City. We had 8 jets, all of them capable of carrying these things. These are 2,000-pound bombs. One of these bombs would destroy this centre. Or it would make a big hole in it. Anyway, it's quite a big centre, isn't it? I was put to fly with Ringo, a very, very experienced navigator out there. We always try to coordinate limited experience with a massive experience just to balance out those jets. He became my best friend out there. This is my team. I am the most junior, the most inexperienced. We've got the squadron boss, the senior flying instructor, senior weapons instructor. I mean, this gentleman at the far right looks like he's joined us out the Second World War. So, you know, a very, very senior team and me. But there are 50 trades in the Air Force. And whenever there's a conflict, you only hear about the pilots. But you need every single one of those trades to be working together in tandem. As cogs in a big machine, everyone from air traffic control, with catering staff, police, regiment, the engineers. You want to talk regulation compliance. I don't want these to be words that these guys are using. I want this to be in their hearts and souls. I want them to be doing the right thing because they want to, not because they have to. Because every single time I get airborne, my life is quite literally in their hands. And I never had any doubt in them. We were working, though, with a huge coalition of aircraft, and we'd go into work with a map that would often look like this. Circles are surface-to-air missiles, arrows are where the troops are on the ground, and the stars are huge guns that shoot up to 30,000 feet. We'd then be given our targets. We'd join a route, and that would last for about 4 hours. On my final night in theatre for the first year when I was out there, as I swept up my last target, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm going home the next day. I've lost 2 stone in weight, I had a great suntan. I was thinking about a new dress I was going to buy, when suddenly, and without warning, Ringo just shouted, "Mandy, brake right!" I instantly reacted. I slammed my throttles fully forward and I rolled quickly to 120 degrees. He started pumping out these things. They're flares. They burn at an incredibly hot intensity. And they act as a decoy to a missile that had fired and locked on to the heat of my engines. This was a maneuver I had practiced hundreds of times before, but never for real. If I had got this wrong, I would not be standing here now. As we did the maneuver, the flares took the missile and it exploded about 2 miles from our jet. We then breathed out. We may have uttered a couple of small descriptive words, I cannot lie. And basically, we radioed through what had happened. Chaos breaks out on the airways. We're given a target that we now have to prosecute. I am leading my first ever combat mission that night. And despite being the most junior on my team, every decision that would affect that team would be made by me. That's just the way it works in the military. Your learning curve is vertical. You are empowered to make decisions, to lead under the most intense scrutiny in life-changing times. And you know what? At the end of that night, I learned more about myself, about decision-making under pressure, and about leadership than I have on any other night in my entire service career. I found the tanker. We went down into Saudi Arabia to expand our options, and I failed to tank. It was a brand new tanker, one that I'd never actually used, an American one. I'd not been cleared to do it, but I had a go. I failed. I had to make a decision to let my boss, my number 2, and my senior executive officer, number 3, to carry on. They proceeded back into Iraq, located the target, and they destroyed it. I landed back at base feeling like a failure. But it's often in those times when we learn the most about ourselves. My boss had empowered me to make decisions. And as I put the phone down to the commander-in-chief that night, who'd informed that our team was the only successful mission accomplished that night, that's when my shoulders went back. And I realized what it was like to lead and be part of a highly performing team, to be made accountable for your decisions and be happy to do so. You know, I've loved my flying career, and a few years ago when it came to an end, I decided to continue it by flying this mighty beast. Not a Tornado, no, but I now take cadets up from the Air Training Corps. It's how I started. It's been lovely to pass on my love of a career to the next generation. I flew a few years ago now, a girl. It was my 10th cadet of the day, and I was not as excited as I was on the first, especially when I saw her. She had a parachute on. Her shoulders were bent over. She had quite an angry look on her face, if I'm honest, as she stropped over. I looked at her, and she gets into the aircraft. I said, "Hello, my name's Flight Lieutenant Mandy Hickson. What's yours?" "Emily." I thought, joy to the world. I have half an hour with this lovely young lady. As she strapped in, she had so much eye makeup on, I was really concerned that under G-force, the weight of the mascara might actually prevent her from opening her eyes. But we got airborne, and it was a perfect sunny day, much like today. Pilot's paradise, we call it. White, fluffy clouds. We started to fly up, down, left, right. Gave her control. She's really good. Absolute born natural. She was so relaxed at one point, I was worried she was slipping into a coma, quite frankly. Next time I took checking for life. I said, let's do some turns. Initially, we did 30 degrees angle of bank. Most cadets go up and down by, a good 200-300 feet, but not Emily. She nailed it. She's brilliant. I said, look, let's see if we can do a 60-degree angle of bank turn. This is much harder, Emily. I said, what you need to do, and at this point, I jest you not, she held her hand between us and said, don't tell me, I read about that in a book somewhere. I thought, well, this could be fascinating, because when you roll to 60 degrees, you lose all the lift on your wings. You have to add full power, pull back on the stick. And if you don't do those two actions, your nose will come come crashing through the horizon, and you'll end up in a spiral descent to death. So I thought, crack on. So I give her control, she rolls in, she adds the power, she pulls back on the stick, and she did it perfectly. It was so annoying. I basically said, let's become not airline pilots. I said, let's become Second World War pilots. Let's dive down onto the tops of these clouds. Let's find gullies to fly through. I'll sing Battle of Britain songs to you. Does that sound like fun, Emily? Suppose. At the end, I looked across and her mouth was twitching. I thought, a smile, I have broken her. It was not, it was wind. I said, let's finish off with some aerobatic maneuvers. I said, I'm going to teach you how to do a loop. Now, when we do a loop, we need to lower the nose to 140 knots, clenching our legs and our stomachs, otherwise the blood will pool in our feet. As we get there, we pull hard back on the stick. Looking for the horizon as we do, we yell yee-haw when we see it, and then we do a 4G pull out the bottom. I said, don't be scared, Emily. At the bottom, when I'm flying it, the whole aeroplane will shake violently. It means you hit perfection. It means you're going through your own slipstream. So I demonstrated my loop, and I'll be honest, mine was really smooth. No shaking. I give her control. I have control, ma'am. She grunts, she pushes, she pulls. We went through the horizon. I yell, yee-haw. She does not. She pulls out the bottom of her loop, and it went da-da-da-da-da-da. She suddenly looked across at me with the most radiant smile on her face, and that smile said to me, I'm actually better than you at this. And I just thought, I'm going to break you. Motivate you in a really empowering fashion. I get the wrong speech sometimes. Anyway, threw everything at this girl. She's so talented. We land the dream on, the propeller aeroplane at the end. I'm taxiing it in. I say, Do you know what, Emily? I've been flying for about 28 years. And in all that time, I have never flown with anyone with as much raw, natural talent as you. And do you know what she said? Puh, I bet you say that to everyone. I could have shaken her, but you're not allowed to touch them. I said, I've never said it to anybody before. Is this something you might want to do? You're brilliant. And she said, you're joking. I said, no. And she went, oh my God, I really can't believe you just said that. Because actually, this is all I ever really wanted the whole of my life. And it's really funny. I was coming here on the bus. I thought, oh my God, I was trying really hard and I failed. What am I going to do then? So I said, stop talking. That's what you're going to do. But basically, it transpires that this was all she'd ever wanted to do the whole of her life. She'd been so scared she's going to fail, she decided not to try. How often do we do that? How often do we back away from things? We don't say yes to opportunities. We have this fear of failing, and so we don't put ourselves forward. And I was speaking at a conference, actually, in Yorkshire, and a man stood up at this point and said, may I have a microphone? I thought, no, you may not. I'm about to end, and you'll ruin my ending. He stood up anyway. He was 84. He said, I'm 84, hence I know. He said, I've worked for the National Trust, Mandy, for the last 38 years. Oh, that's lovely for you, good. He said, in all that time, though, there's been this really huge lawnmower. What are you talking about? He said, I've always been too scared to use this lawnmower, but you know what? Hearing you today, I've decided I'm just going to have a go on the big lawnmower. I went, yes! That is what life's all about, because I'm not here to encourage you guys to be fast jet pilots, but you know what? There might be a lawnmower moment buried deep within you. I do not want you to have dreams like this. It's crap. Okay, you've got to go bigger. You've got to go to the sit-on versions. You know, people send me lawnmower pictures now. That's what has become of me. You know, I had high dreams at one point. Yes, this goes at 106 miles an hour. But this has got to be my favorite of all. You never know what you can achieve unless you try. And I had my lawnmower moment the other day when someone said to me, Mandy, do you fancy going up Kilimanjaro? I thought, do you know what? I've been talking a talk for some years. Maybe I should step up and say yes. And so I did. 3 weeks ago, with a group of 20 women, I summited Kilimanjaro. It was the most challenging experience of my life. It's interesting. You think of Kilimanjaro, you think summer's walk. You think, yes, it's a bit high. It should be fine, though. We had visions of sunlight. Every morning, yes, we did have the sunshine, but every afternoon we finished in torrential rain. We got back to our tents exhausted in the pouring rain. But there was one thing that roused us every single morning, and it's that realization that we might have been a group of 20 women, but behind us, we had 80 Sherpas supporting our every single move. They started every morning with this. Can you imagine that? Getting you going for the day while you're filling up your water, roused as we were. And it was fantastic because on summit night, when we had dreams of that beautiful sunrise over the African desert, we were slightly disappointed. It was a snow blizzard, yes. For 7 hours, we walked in thick snow. 7 hours when we were meant to reach the summit, we were only about 3/4 of the way up the mountain. After 9 hours, we finally hit the top in a snowstorm. We were freezing cold. I had severe diarrhea. I like to share all the details, you know, really get you in on this one. But you know what? It was challenging. I have never been through such a brutally challenging day in my life. But eventually, we hit the summit. And it all goes down to these people. The person I would particularly like to highlight is the one that's doing this. His job, he was the toilet man. Talk about a shit job. Oh, yes, he had it. I can do all the puns, you know, starting from the bottom and working the way up. Oh, yeah, they're all there. But you know what? Every morning he was smiling. Every day he was encouraging. He was the one that was filming us all while he was dancing and they were laughing. And you realize in life, you need to have that team. This was their chant. And that's what we had up the mountain. One team, one dream. It hits with my philosophy in life because you know what? We can all have dreams. We can, in fact, believe those dreams. But unless you put them into action, you're going nowhere. You've got to dream it, believe it, and do it. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.